Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling, and shall we see what's going on our lovely little island of Fawnhollow today? I don't know what happened to my today. I feel like I've been trying to sneak in a voice crack and on my random words every now and then. Like a voice squeak is probably a better thing to say because it's not quite a voice crack. But it's today, you know? I don't know why. It's not intentional, mind you. That one was sort of because it's a little trend that I've been noticing in some of my video intros and that sort of thing. Make them a little bit more spicy, a little bit different, that sort of thing. Anyway, hello everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 3:27 PM on Friday, June 18th, 2021. No breaking news today, so we'll just go about our usual business. Because it's Friday. I can't make this joke every Friday, because it's gonna get a little bit old. So we'll go about our usual business. Actually, not quite our usual business. We are going to be laying down an ice path that we lovingly downloaded from, I can't remember their name, but check out yesterday's video from somewhere near the end, around the 20-minute mark, or when we downloaded it from whoever's code it was. Get a load of this dear. Who is it? It's Mira. I went to class reunion. Can you believe what I won on raffle? I'm never going to need this thing, but you might. If you don't feel free to set it up or give it away or whatever. Up to you. Thanks, bud. We definitely had that letter before. I recognise it. Flick has given us something, which I don't recall. But yeah, we'll be doing actually a little bit of customization, which we haven't done for quite a while. An automatic wash. You don't wash your clothes? We know Red is not our visitor. We're just going to have a quick glance to see who our visitor might potentially be before we go about... Well, everyone's it. Biscuit! Hello, Biscuit. Hey there. What's the latest of you? I wonder if something fun will happen today. It could. Any old second. Any time now. I'm so excited. I actually forgot that Biscuit moved into our island yesterday. So seeing him was a lovely surprise for me just then. Yeah, what I want to talk about though. I was going to talk about fighting games because there was a little thing from the creator of... hold on. What? Rivals of Aether. I kept thinking Realm of Mad God, that is not the right game. Rivals of Aether, which if you don't know is a sort of like a fighting game. Is a fighting game with similar style to Smash Bros. Because it's a platform fighter rather than a side-on sort of... It's not a scrolling fighter, but stage-based fighter. I don't really know how I should describe it. And it was just like, I can't remember the exact wording, but the general consensus being like, after so many years in development, I've just got to accept at this point that like experienced players would just basically trash new players all the time in these sort of fighting games. And it got me thinking, because fighting games is a very sort of it's probably one of the genres with the highest barriers to entry. I'm not sure if it's got the highest. You can probably make a case for some like RTSs, like some sort of strategy games like StarCraft have extremely high barriers to entry. MOBAs tend to do as well, but the barriers to entry tends. Oh my gosh, we were just at a Nook terminal. The barrier to entry to MOBAs tend to be the quantity of information you have to take in rather than the necessary depth and technical detail that you need to know. Fighting games is very. If you don't know, fighting games an extraordinarily technical video game, they require very precise inputs and knowing exactly what to do, hard reads on your opponent, knowing what to do exactly at what sort of situations. And it's the game where, I'm not sure if it's the most skill-based genre, but it's one where being good just completely demolishes anyone who's, like, skill disparity, I suppose, is what I mean to say, is very, very apparent in that sort of genre. And it's a notoriously sort of, I'm not sure what word would be, opaque, notoriously difficult genre to get into because of the things you need to know, and obtuse, that's the word I wanted, and how hard it is to learn them in the first place. Because I'm not sure if I'd say I have an interest in fighting games. I find them intriguing. There's a lot of games out there which I like, which are fighting games. By a lot, I mean Skullgirls was one of them, and Them's Fighting Hurts is another, like, I'm interested in, I should say. Just the bigger problem is they are very obtuse and difficult to get into, and it's not something that I'm super willing to put into the time into. I think like I've spoken about this before in passing, but I checked. I haven't done like a full video about me talking about this sort of thing. So yeah, fighting games is a difficult thing. It's a thing I've spoken to lots of people about. Not many of my friends play fighting games. The only ones that really do play, some of them play Smash Bros. That's about it. Smash Bros, of course, being a bit easier to for a lot of us to get into because it's something that we played a lot of party games with and spent a lot of time with in the first place, so it's not too bad. Our visitor is probably Gulliver, right? I think we had Sahara last week, so it's no surprise there that Smash Bros would be the only one that people necessarily get into. I played a bit of Skullgirls with Ali, and then that that's, I think, about the extent of it. And I myself have played a decent amount of Skullgirls and an okay amount of fighting cards because I find them interesting. You know me, if I like a game of aesthetics, I'll put the time in to try and like at least give it a shot. But fighting games, it's a sort of game where I like it conceptually. I like the idea of just like having a quick sort of one-on-one battle with someone. Like you just want to kill some time with some friends. It's something you just pick up and play. And I'm not a competitive person, mind you, at all. But sort of things, but creativity that you can express through fighting games seems like an interesting medium. From my perspective, it's just really hard to get into and really hard. I suppose it goes triply so difficult because since people in our friend circle, very few of us even play fighting games in the first place. Actually, I think Morgan might play Tekken. I don't know, but anyway, it's just so difficult. And like, if your friends don't play it, why are you going to play it and put time into it unless you want to learn it specifically for yourself? But you know, it's a game which needs an opponent, and for me, the most fun I have is when I play with someone else. So you know, it sort of just goes on my back burner. It's a game I just don't end up playing, which I think is a shame because I feel like fighting games, and yeah, all of this got like brought up in my mind as I read that wasn't the director or whatever who talked about the Rivals of FIFA person. I don't think it's so much an issue that experienced players just, you know, trash new players. That kind of happens for every game, and I suppose you might argue an issue is the skill disparity is so large that there's never those sort of like mini luck instincts which can happen, which help like a new player beat an experienced player and get that sort of thrill and rush. It's sort of the fighting game just beats down on the new player over and over again, and they never get to feel they need to put in a lot of effort to basically feel that dopamine rush of actually getting a victory in the first place. And part of that's due to probably fighting games tending to be quite a niche genre due to like other factors which I suppose we'll talk about later, but it just means skill-based matchmaking can't often match people all that well because there's not enough new people to match people with in the first place, which makes it difficult for numerous reasons, I suppose. Because if you're new and you're trying to get into a game, you want to fight someone, you try and fight someone, it's like, oh, turns out they're extraordinarily experienced in this game, they got hundreds of more hours to you, and they just utterly demolish you, and it's demoralizing. Whether you like to think it or not, it is demoralizing. It's like I'm just out here trying to enjoy the game, and here I am just getting absolutely wrecked in every sense of the word. What do we have a mosquito. Where should we put this mosquito? Here? I don't know. So yeah, like, whether you like or not, it's not fun getting wrecked. It's fun to know or feel like you have a chance to win. Yeah, I guess we'll go assess one fossil anyway. If we get the mission, then so be it. So the question is, how do you make fighting games more accessible for people? And I think that's quite a difficult thing to answer in the first place because it is something which I feel like every complicated game system is trying to do in the first place, aren't they? Like, but I feel like, you know, like League of Legends, they got tutorials. Dota's apparently got quite a good tutorial. I think it's either it didn't have a tutorial and then it got one that's really good, or something along those lines. Like StarCraft, I'm sure is a very difficult game, hard to get into, but I don't know if it's even got a tutorial system. This is these difficult games which, especially based around competitiveness with other players, they're trying to basically answer the question for themselves: how do we create a good tutorial? And mind you, what I think is the problem with a lot of these sort of things is the tutorials are often community tutorials. I feel like with the best one, like the way I learned how to play League of Legends was not from the League of Legends tutorial themselves. It was from it was from playing the tutorial, playing the game a few times, being like, wow, I suck at this, and watching YouTube videos later on guides of like how to play the game. That's, oh yeah, we're moving Lily's house, I forgot we need to do that. Like watching guides and this sort of thing, be like how from better players and how to get it ourselves, which is, you know, nice in itself. That there is tutorialization out there, very see kind of over there, to help out new players to especially ease themselves into the complicated world of playing these sort of games. But you know, I feel like we shouldn't have to rely on community goodwill to make these sort of games in the first place, because that sort of relies on the community having a big enough population in the first place to warrant these sort of guides, and to even have people in the first place who would want to make guides for the video game that they enjoy playing, which is, you know, not saying that it doesn't often happen, it happens quite a lot, but it's difficult, and I feel like that sort of reliance shouldn't be there in the first place. It shouldn't very much be on the devs' hands. I feel like to start at least get a good basis. Like, devs don't need to do it in-depth guide, but they should be able to explain the basics and the fundamental mechanics, I suppose, of a game, which aren't always necessarily so apparent. And I feel like that's something which goes with fighting games a lot, because notoriously fighting games don't have very good tutorials. Very few. They normally tell you how to move, this is how you punch and stuff, but they don't really explain to you any concepts that you kind of need for fighting games, which are sort of prerequisite to an understanding. So it's like, yeah, you know about what blocking is, but you don't know how to like internalize what a high attack or what a low attack is. Sometimes they don't even explain to you what the difference is and that sort of thing. They don't tell you about like push blocking necessarily. They don't tell you about when to block. They don't tell you about like how to space yourself. They don't tell you like what each of like your quirk. They tell you literally what the quirks of like your character are and what they do, but they don't tell you like how to use that to your advantage. They'd be like, oh, your character has a projectile, but they're not like, oh, this character is actually like a keep away sort of character. You want to focus on maintaining your distance every time they get close. So you try using this to sort of break out of it. At least that's been my experience with fighting games. And I played a bit of Street Fighter. I played a little bit of Marvel vs. Capcom on friend systems and that sort of thing. But the exception with that, I think, is Skullgirls, actually, when it comes down to it. I mean, obviously, let's look. I'm not here to talk about the controversy with what's the name, like one of the devs of Skullgirls. I don't know. Like, that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm here to talk about the game in the vacuum, death of the author, and that sort of thing. Skullgirls has a really comprehensive tutorial system. It's actually extraordinarily comprehensive. It's basically an encyclopedia. Not an encyclopedia, that's a bit too far. It's really good, I think, for easing a new player into the mechanics of a fighting game. Like they teach you the normal things, like this is how you move, and like this is how you dash, this is how you attack, these are your 6 attacks, and that sort of thing. But then they do other things as well, which I think is very important. They teach you about spacing, they teach you about like grappling and like sort of when to use them, and the most important part, they teach you a very basic combos and that sort of thing, and when to use them. They teach you about supers. Each character has a specific tutorial crafted like exactly for them, teaching you how to use a character and that sort of thing. It's been a very long while since I've played Skullgirls and that tutorial, so I can't quite recall, and I might get some of the information from it mixed up with some tutorials that I used to watch of that sort of thing. But it's far more comprehensive than basically every other tutorial I've seen. I feel like in a lot of fighting games tutorials I've seen, they basically throw you into the equivalent of like the sandbox mode, and they're just like, oh, here's a combo string, do it. Which is, you know, it's alright to teach some bread and butter, but there's other like concepts which I feel like I had to get across. I'm not sure if a Skullgirls tutorial covered concepts about like spacing and like what's it called, a neutral game. So I'm not a fighting game expert at all myself, but I do have a passing interest in conceptually fighting games, which I always feel like a fun old time. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what we need more with that sort of thing, because I feel like that's a good way to convey concepts to new people into fighting game, because that's like how you get your fighting game to, well, not just fighting games, that's how you can get your video game genre to grow in the first place. It's nice to be able to put in mechanics and that sort of thing that keeps your core fan base around, but you want it to grow, you want to ease people into it. And the thing about that is, I feel like it only takes one good fighting game to pop off, one accessible fighting game for newbies to really just like make everything pop off, and then suddenly the fighting game genre can get a whole swath of new people interested in exactly what the genre has to offer. So I feel like that's happened, like, I know this isn't a video game, but with D&D, 5th edition especially. Like, I've been aware about D&D for a lot of the time, but, you know, every time I looked into it in the past, I was like, it's so complicated, I don't know anyone's playing D&D in the first place, that sort of thing. But 5th edition is really accessible. I mean, it turned out with me joining a tabletop club back in university and, like, giving it a try. It's difficult for, like, the first few times, but once you start sort of, like, playing, you get used to it, and because the systems have been, as I understand it, vastly simplified from previous editions. As a contrast, it's now extraordinarily accessible, and it's now probably the most popular D&D edition by far and away, come out from all of them. I mean, sure, but I'm certain it's been emphasized even more in popular media. It's been the growing popularity of certain media properties incorporating D&D into that sort of thing makes it far more popular, because apparently it was in Stranger Things. I don't know. I haven't watched Stranger Things, so I can't vouch for that. Critical Role is becoming a lot more mainstream with that sort of thing, with Matt Mercer and his crew, putting it into a spotlight and seeing how the role-playing process can really come to life. There's a lot more popular YouTube videos of that sort of thing about D&D. I feel like people have a much more awareness about that sort of thing, which is cool to see. I've not been like a long die-hard fan of D&D this entire time. Like, I myself have only been interested in it since the 5th edition because, you know, as I said before, I've always been curious about it because it sounds like my sort of thing, but then when I look up like how to do it, I'm just like, it's overwhelming, the stuff you need to learn. I mean, I guess in this case it helps that I joined a club, which, you know, one of the best ways to learn is from people who already know. But me reaching out and me actually joining the club in the first place was because I feel like I talked to one of the tabletop people and signed up for it. I mean, I was like, I hear D&D's really hard to get into, and they said something along the lines of 5th edition, which is the current edition, it's actually really accessible for a lot of people, so, you know, give it a shot on that sort of thing. I was like, you know what, alright, we'll give it a shot. You know, it's fantastic. I haven't played it, obviously, for a while since, but I talk about it all the time. I'm interested in starting my own campaign with my group of friends and seeing how that goes, and like introduces to them. And there we go, it's a sort of snowball effect. Once more people get in and it's more accessible, they can know, and then maybe they'll start playing more games in the future, or joining their own sessions, I don't know. And it just becomes a snowball effect, and maybe they'll check out other things. And like, the more people you introduce, obviously, maybe like only 10% of those people will go on to dive any deeper than just the surface level, just being like a player or a in between passive active participant in the games. Maybe like 10% will go on to be like, oh, you know, I want to find some different systems and that sort of thing. So maybe we'll go on to like Pathfinder or something, or they'll look into previous systems and like get exposed to. I don't mean to do Nook shopping. Oh, we might as well check. There might be new furniture items. Also, when is Father's Day? I should probably check this. It's definitely soon. I know it's in June, but Father's Day 2021. Sunday, June 20th. Oh, it's Sunday. Who'd have thunk it? I guess we'll talk about that then. What was I talking about? I forgot. Yeah, so I think it's a similar thing with fighting game. There just needs to be one super accessible fighting game which can really open up the horizon to everyone. Now, you might say, hey, isn't Smash Bros. That super exciting, accessible fighting game? Kind of, but the problem is I feel like it's the exposure to it isn't quite the same as the exposure to a fighting game in the same sense, because the way I personally, and I'm sure a lot of others have been exposed to Smash Bros. Is as a party game rather than as a fighting game. I've got We're Moving Lily, and we're moving Lily to basically where person's house used to be, Claude's house used to be, and then we're going to move Biscuit to where Lily is. What do you could say? Moving my entire home sounds like it'd be thrilling. I'd love to have you move it, Rainy. I'm not moving you all that far, but just somewhere nice, hopefully. What was I going to say? Yeah, like the way I see Smash Bros in my mind is as a party game rather than like a fighting game, which I know it's not. It's kind of like a mix of both. It's got two styles. I guess Nintendo initially set out to create some sort of party-esque sort of game in the fighting genre, just like Mario Kart is a party game under the racing genre, but it spawned its own competitive scene. And I guess because fighting games have a much more established competitive scene in the first place, maybe that's how it translated more to being much more competitive rather than Mario Kart Wii, which didn't really have much of a competitive presence, I suppose, except for speedrunners. Maybe I don't know. I'm not an expert in that sort of thing, so don't hold me by the words I'm saying. Lily should not move here. Lily should move over one. This is a time where we can actually move Lily. If we this house, if we want to put it somewhere slightly different. That's a good point. I didn't think about this. I feel like we want it more on this river bend here, like hugging the bamboo. Let me imagine it. Let me just see what this looks like before I'm too hasty about that sort of thing. Because I don't want to block the fish in the background. Is basically what, and this allows us to potentially put a bridge over here if we want it. So yeah, I think we're going to move Lily's house here. Oh, I actually got rid of that bamboo. Because now this allows us basically to put a thing over here and actually decorate this area with a much more of a flowery motif than what we got currently. So we've got a flower stand. Yeah. So that's what I was saying about Smash Bros. I see it in my mind more as a party game. Your mileage may vary, to be fair, but that's like been my exposure to it. So it's like it doesn't spur me on to be like, oh, I'm interested in fighting games more, because it's not the sort of, it's not really a good translation, I suppose. Is how I'd put it. But yeah, your mileage may vary with that sort of thing. What I mean is, so like, I don't know, the next Street Fighters have a really comprehensive, in-depth tutorial system, which and somehow become not. It doesn't need to be accessible. No, it does. Sorry, it does need to be accessible to newbies, but it doesn't need to be easy, is what I mean. Necessarily, it should. Fighting games should probably not necessarily get rid of the huge amount of depth that they got. I feel like that's one of the coolest things about fighting games in the first place. But just being basically like, since the skill floor is so high, basically just giving you new players like a ladder to actually be able to have a chance at climbing it, rather than being like, all right, it's up there, you know, just go slowly build your way up. Now, that's a difficult thing to do. How do you lower the skill floor without raising the skill ceiling? Obviously, without lowering the skill ceiling as well. Because obviously you can simplify some mechanics, but then if you simplify mechanics, sometimes it can take the depth out of the game in the first place, which is, you know, the complete antithesis of exactly what you want going on when you're making a game, a fighting game as well. Because especially with fighting games, unsurprisingly, I think developers probably don't want to take so many risks, because their core audience are very hardcore competitive, and they like these mechanics. They're going to notice, you know, these sort of things. If you're like, oh, we took out, I don't even know what a complicated fighting game mechanic is. We took out like Tiger Knee attacks or that sort of thing. And I don't really know what Tiger Knee is. I think it's when you can like use things very close to the ground. Oh yeah, we do need to sell fruits, don't we? The audience is going to be like, why? If you introduce goofy things to try and make it appeal to a much more broad audience, like, you know, for some reason Smash Bros. Broad, they introduced like tripping as a mechanic, your core hardcore audience is going to be like, why would you ruin the game like this for all of us? And you know, I'm not sure if it's a difficult, well, I mean, it obviously is a difficult balance to strike, but I wonder how much care certain devs put into that sort of thing. Nintendo, obviously, they kind of notoriously don't really care about the competitive scene. That's not really what they're here about, which is, you know, it's their judgment in the end, I suppose. But I feel like it's a sort of waste of potential. I feel like indie devs certainly do a better job, as I understand it. I don't know if, but you know, they don't have as much budget, so they can't, you know, put a huge square around a huge amount of their budget for something which, I guess, investors are going to look at and be like, this is just a waste of time with that sort of thing. But I don't know. I'm not an expert in, or anything to do with the gaming industry, to be honest. So you take whatever I say with a grain of salt. I'm just saying, I suppose, my perspective from someone who's been interested in fighting games but can't really get into it. Like, I'm sure if I had a friend who was basically, they super like playing Skullgirls or Worms Fighting Heads, maybe I'd get more into it, and I'd be more willing to put in the time with that sort of thing, and be like, hey, I'm going to give it a shot because this seems fun, and I've always wanted to get into it, and now I've got someone who can basically teach me. As the sort of things go on, I've got someone to play with all the time. You got in a fight with Rowan? Of course we could deliver this present. I'll save snack time. But yeah, it's a difficult thing to really quantify, and I think it's something which I feel like a lot of people have been trying to solve for ages, but is not easy, and it's a whole overall mess in the first place to really try and resolve. I also didn't realise you always had your crafting bench out. That's interesting. Most villagers don't always have a crafting bench out. So yeah, I don't really know what you can do to it. You just gotta hope at some. I just hope at some point some video game is going to be out there and it's going to be really accessible and really fun for new players to get into. It's going to pop off a genre, and then it'll start populating a lot of the other things. Because yeah, it was a thing that happened with Skullgirls and Worms Fighting Heads. It's like, I didn't want to play online matchmaking because I was like, the only people who play this game are people who are really good at this game. I want to fight people around my level, which is why I want to, you know, if any of my friends started playing, it's like, cool, we can learn together. But it's difficult. And I guess that's something which kind of happens with video games where skill disparity is really big, like fighting games and that sort of thing. Like, I'd imagine it happened with StarCraft as well, or something, but StarCraft, I guess, has a much bigger audience, so perhaps it's a bit easier to find newer players, but I don't know. I think it's even worse because the fighting games are like quite small indie titles. I know Skullgirls is probably like the largest indie fighting game there is out there. Maybe, I don't know. Well, that or Rivals of Eva. So it's certainly up there. But even then, it's got quite a small community. I think it's slowly getting revived though, because but under new management now, of course, and they're slowly releasing new characters. You know, I know they I'm not sure if she has been released. They had like Annie of the Stars or something being released. So let's just, excuse me, check out the Skullgirls subreddit. Do people still play this game 2 years ago? And I remember it was like, yes. Skullgirls smashes through 40k subs. That is crazy because I used to sub to the subreddit, and I remember when it had less than 2,000, maybe even less than 1,000. People subscribe to the subreddit, and it's crazy to see so it's growing. So clearly, what do I know? It's always been growing, and that's honestly awesome because I think Skullgirls do something really. Skullgirls do stuff really, really right when it comes to games. Some things it does wrong, like you might find some of the designs a bit questionable, a bit overtly sexual compared to a lot of other games. Yeah, I do kind of agree. Some of them I'm like fine with. Like Valentine, she seems like a very overtly sexual character and that sort of thing. So I'm just like, all right, I guess. Some of them is just a bit strange in certain aspects. Like Philia seems a bit much more to me, but you know, that's just personal tastes when it comes to things. It doesn't bother me too much because I think that overrides it completely for me. Is that animations in the game are phenomenal. It's all hand-drawn animations, as far as I know. That sort of, or something like that, frame by frame. I can't really remember, and it's really cool. It's a really cool looking game, basically. What should we do? What Nook Mile missions do we have left to do? Or what can we do in this time? We can sell things, customize things, craft things. Okay, let's do that. And I think we can just about squeeze that in. Yes, I mean, Skullgirls, I talked about it already. The tutorial system is really cool. Story mode was fun. The characters engaging. The only thing is, fighting games are kind of known for their huge roster size, right? Skullgirls has a okay roster. I remember when on release it was like 9 characters. I think now it's like 15, maybe, give or take. I don't really know off the top of my head, which is still awesome, mind you. But as a thing of fighting games, because every characters have very specific, or tend to have very specific playstyles, right? So you want to make sure your players can find a character who appeals directly to them. Like some of them, like I do. Like I really like playing Peacock. I like playing keep away characters, and that sort of thing. So her playstyle appeals to me. Luckily for me as well, her aesthetics appeal to me, and with her 1920s sort of cartoony weirdness. It's all good fun. Let's see, what top news have you got from the month here, Skullgirls? Like Annie has been added, I don't know. Marie? Oh no, it's a meme. When you want to play them. It seems like Annie's in the game now, maybe? I don't. We got 3 already, so we don't need to make any more. Let us customize some things. What do we need to customize? Shovel is definitely one of them. We need to customize fishing rod, I think was the last thing we used. But yeah, but Them's Fighting Herds is another one which I've been following on for a while, because if you don't know, Them's Fighting Herds was originally like a My Little Pony fan-made fighting game made by a small team, and then, you know, I suppose cease and desisted it before it could get finally released. It was really close to being completed. They had like 4 characters completed, and then it was like Fluttershy and Rainbow Dashwood like were being worked on at the moment, and they got cease and desisted, and it kind of sucked. It was a sad thing as well because they didn't want to release a game until it was fully finished, which is a decision I respect, but also I kind of disagree with, because I feel like if you're making a game which is towing the line of cease and desist ability, like any game which uses a private IP which you don't own the rights to, I'd imagine you kind of want to release it at all opportunities, which maybe that's easy for me to say in hindsight because I'm not one developing it. I also understand that they wanted to have it all in a big release, so they had some big hype event or something when it was completely finished. But yeah, although apparently some earlier versions got leaked and then some other people picked up the project and finished it anyway before Hasbro can cease and desist them anyway. So there's a working, functional final version of it out there, which is pretty cool. So he said, I don't know if there's anything's happened to it. I played that for a little bit, and it was good fun. Who did I play, you ask? I don't even remember who I played, now I think about it. Who did I play? It was probably Rarity. I can't imagine. Anyway, so Them's Fighting Herds something we just spawned off of that because the creator of Minus Many Friends of Magic, Lauren Faust, she was just like, hey, why don't I create some characters for you and you can make this game come to life. The Skullgirls people was like, if we get enough on our Kickstarter, we'll give their engine, our engine, for free to them. And then that happened because Skullgirls got a huge amount of Kickstarter funds, and it was pretty cool. And then it's been released, but you know, it's not many people play it. None of my friends obviously are interested in that sort of thing because, you know, one is both a fighting game and two, they're not interested in playing one which is necessarily My Little Pony inspired. But I think it's cool. They released a new character recently, like Shanti, I believe her name is. So maybe at some point I should check it out. Maybe that would be an interesting idea for a series. Learning to play fighting games, so it can be a sort of process together. I mean, that's the sort of thing I would do if I was like some hugely big YouTuber. I would just like play it, you know, and try and get more people to play the games I like and that sort of thing. And it'd be fun to start growing that sort of community, but oh well. Who knows? Basically, fighting games are kind of cool. Maybe if I ever get the time, I'll try and learn them. Otherwise, it's not something that's happening in foreseeable future for now. Apart from something just to mess around with, because that's a fun thing to mess around on. If both people are equal skill, like me, I'm not that good, and like my friends obviously aren't that good either. It's super fun, I think, to mess around with that sort of game because it's so evenly balanced. But anyway, that's enough about fighting games, and it's enough for this episode. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. This has been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, description, shares are greatly appreciated. Join my Dear Darling Discord and follow me on Twitter down below. I hope we can see each other again, but for now, it's farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.